Very excited to be talking to someone I have been following the work of for a really long time. We have Christina Garnett on today's episode of Spill the Marketing Beans. She's a senior marketing manager at Hubspot for offline community and advocacy. First of all, Christina, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be here.
So I want to jump straight right to it. I know that we have been, moving from saying, sales-led growth to product-led growth and I know we've been talking a lot about, how community-led growth is the way to go. And that makes sense, right? You want your customers to be like sort of fans and talk about the product and stuff. So for a company that is thinking about it, but have not got anything at all for a community, how do you think they can get started? What would the foundation look like to build a community for a SaaS product or a company?
Absolutely. So at the foundation of that, you have to be customer centric. You truly have to love them and care for them and want them to feel successful with your product.
Yeah.
Your SaaS product isn't just something to get money from them. It needs to be something that makes their life easier or better in some capacity. And so if the foundation of everything that you're doing, if that's customer centric, then you're doing a lot of what you need for good, positive community building without realizing it.
Yeah.
Because you're making it about them.
Yeah.
And that's really what community is about. Like, you can manage a community, but you don't really own a community because it's the social experiment of these humans with all these different needs and behavior choices.
Yeah.
And you're really trying to foster a relationship between your brand and your customers, your potential customers, the customers who've been with you forever that probably feel ignored and taken for granted, the whole gamut. And so I would say from the beginning, you have to be customer centric because otherwise you'll get tired, you'll get frustrated, and you'll give up before it really is what it could become.
So I'm curious now, even in the company that I'm currently working, that is something that we're actively trying to do to build that community. We put down a content plan and we realized there was a lot of things that we're thinking, okay, we need to push out, but then what can I do to make sure that it's the community members that's starting the chatter without me having to say, hey, engage, take part in that poll that I just posted?
I would first lurk and pay very close attention and watch. Be a people person that watches, that observes, and start figuring out what people are more likely to engage with, what people are more likely to like or want to talk about. If you're not doing any social listening, you should be.
Yeah.
Really trying to figure out what are they excited about when it comes to you or your industry, whether you become a part of that conversation or not, because that will help you decide like distribution channels where you need to be talking. And also you have a really good idea. Like, you can't guarantee that something's going to go viral or that something is going to perform well, but you can have data to have a really good idea that it probably will perform well. So if you know, and you're able to look at your own content and look at how they're talking independently and say, hey, these keywords and these topics are important to our customers, and they're having these kind of conversations here versus these kind of conversations over here. And that will really help you dictate not only what you want to talk about, but how you want to frame it. You need to frame it in such a way that it makes sense for them. There's a lot of brands who've said a lot of what they need to say about their brand, but they're doing it through memes.
Yeah.
And that's like, they're able to really kind of showcase brand awareness, build brand affinity. And it's because they're telling their story, but they're telling it in a way that they know their customers and base are more likely to engage with. And so as soon as you figure out what medium they like, and you're able to be like, how could we tell our story in that capacity in a very powerful but customer focused way, you're going to get that return that you're wanting. You're going to get that engagement, and also empowering them. A lot of people don't feel the love when they say something positive. Brands are really good about handling things when there's a fire and people are yelling at them online. Yeah. We immediately go into support and like mitigate, like let's mitigate the issue.
It's reactive. Yeah.
It's hyper reactive.
Yeah.
But we aren't as reactive to people who love us. And so you need to empower your customers, whether they are mad, be like, we want to learn from this. Here's opportunities to give us feedback. Here's how you can make sure that we fix this for you. Versus, we're so glad that you love us. Here's a piece of swag, or we think you'd like this, or Because you love this, we think that we'd love to have you be featured in a blog about this, since this is so incredibly important to you. That empowerment piece is so incredibly crucial, because when someone feels empowered, they'll speak up more, they'll get louder. And if they love you, that means that the love gets louder. And so that's incredibly crucial for brands to think about.
I love that point when you brought up that example of like using memes, because, it's entertaining. It'll also like educate. It'll also get someone like taking think, that's relatable. And I love the point about, empowering people and educating them. I'm obviously curious to know, are there any like tactics or things that you've used, like in your experience, if you want to use HubSpot as an example, maybe, things that have worked for you in building a community?
Yeah. For me, it comes down to talking to the customers themselves and talking to our advocates. So with my work in advocacy at HubSpot, one of the first things that I did was start social listening and start really researching what kind of conversations people are having, and leaning into not just the good. It's really nice to like lean into the love and be like, see, look at how much they love us. But there's also so much opportunity in the negative. And so when someone's speaking negatively about you, making sure that they feel heard and making sure that you're able to say like, I see this, let's get on a call. What can we do to help you? What's happening with this? And that goes straight back to that customer-centric ideology that you need to have. But for me, when I've been a HubSpot fan for years before I started. And so I was connected with a lot of partners and customers and people who were pretty wide open in the social media space when it comes to HubSpot. And so when I started my role, I immediately started DMing them and be like, hey, would love to chat. Just want to get your feedback. What do you love? Do you feel appreciated? How can I make you feel more appreciated? How can I make you feel special? What motivates you? What do you, if you were given my role, what would you love to get? What would you love to have? Is it you want to do a speaking opportunity? Is it you want to be featured in a blog? Is it you just want to be able to have a voice heard in the crowd for feedback? Whatever that looks like, because we all have different goals. Some people just want to be appreciated. But the thing is that we have such a loyal fan base. Our fans have all of the swag imaginable. And so my job is I get to look for those opportunities of like, where can we love them more than swag? Where can we make them feel special? And how can we continue to look and make sure that we're taking care of them? Because I have no doubt they love us, but I want to make sure that they feel that love in return.
I really like that. And it's also one of the questions I did want to ask you, especially for a company that's probably starting their like community program and stuff. And I know things like swag would, always like play some kind of role. You think you'd give a t-shirt and you're like, make your community members happy. I did want to know, what sort of, other than swag, what other kind of reward like really wow your community members? Like what other ways can you what other things can you do to like make them feel special, especially in the research that you've done?
Think about it just like you would if you were, let's say that you're a fan of something else, a fan of something easier than SaaS. Let's say that you're a Marvel fan. If you look at it from the same mechanics and you look at it from the same like behavioral triggers, it's very similar. So if I'm a Marvel fan, obviously getting swag would be amazing. But if like Marvel retweeted me, that would be incredible. Or if Marvel used my UGC on their social channels, that would be incredible. But that's base level. Now we go up. So now let's think about, hey, do you want to come over and have a tour of HQ? Or do you want a screener to watch something before it premieres, which is essentially a beta tester? Like, do you want to be featured in this article that we're writing about fan reviews? So now you're getting quoted in a blog. Or do you want to be a speaker at Comic-Con for us? Well, now that's basically like a speaking engagement for like a SaaS product. So there's so many parallels. And a lot of people think that being a fan of something like Marvel or comics is easier because it's just sexier. But the behavior triggers are similar. They're hyper similar. So think like, how can you give VIP treatment? How can you make people feel like they have behind the scenes access? How can you make them feel like they get something early and exclusive? Use that scarcity and exclusivity as a pull, because what you're doing is you're saying, not only do we love you, We want to be able to give you this opportunity. We want to be able to reward you and give you something. If you love us, then you're going to want to know about new features before they're launched. You're going to want to know, you're going to want to speak to some of our executives and pick their brains and do like an AMA. You're going to want that special kind of things. So if it makes it easier, think about what it looks like in like the sexy non-tech space. And then like, what is the parallel for that in the SaaS world? Because it exists. I promise you it exists.
Yeah.
You just have to identify it.
Okay, cool. So on that, I'm wondering, I mean, those are definitely like best practices that companies can use. When it comes to community building, what do you feel sometimes, the places or the points where companies miss the mark when it comes to building a community?
It's long game.
Yeah.
And with most marketing, we're so KPI and metrics driven, which is important because you need to prove that your work is working.
Yeah.
Valid. But with community, you're herding cats.
Yeah.
Like it's a social experiment.
Yeah.
And so you can do all the things correct and know that like this should work, but it may not work as fast as you want, or they may not behave the way you thought they were. There's tons of hypotheses that you can create for a community. And then when it comes down to actually seeing it in motion, it's like, they didn't do what I thought they did. But product managers see that all the time. You didn't use my product the way I thought you would use my product, or the way I envisioned it. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you didn't see that perspective. And so it's incredibly important to think about how can you make sure that you're, like I said, that customer-centric perspective, if that's at the heart of what you're doing, then it's a long game because it's a relationship. And some of the best marketing is relationships, because that's how you brand, that's how you get loyalty, that's how you get affinity, that's how you get really strong referrals, because even if they don't benefit from it, they want to take care of others and be like, these people took such good care of me. I want you to be taken care of just as well.
Right.
I don't have any benefits from it. I don't get any money from it, but I just want to spread the word. Positive word of mouth is so incredibly powerful and will continue to be powerful. Doesn't matter how much social media changes. All that does is it's just new ways for word of mouth to travel.
Yeah.
And so, but that comes from loyalty. That comes from taking care of your customers. That comes from making sure that when you've done something wrong, that you fix it. And that when they love you, you love them back.
Yeah.
And so, but that's long game. And so community is really interesting because it is such a buzzword now, even though people have been doing community work for ages.
Yeah.
You're going to see the people who leaned into it as a buzzword because they're going to quit in a couple years when they're like, oh, it just didn't happen as fast as I wanted.
Yeah.
And be like, this is a relationship. Like, that's what this is. It's a relationship with like hundreds and thousands of people though. And so it needs to feel human. They can tell when you care. They can tell when you're just like trying to get quick engagement versus I genuinely want to know what you have to say. I genuinely want your point of view. People know, even online, people know. And so it impacts their behavior. So biggest issue is it's going to take time. And there's no right or wrong answer to how long it will take. It could be based off of what the community's for. Some communities aren't meant to grow either. Some need to feel intimate and small in order for them to be successful. And then once you open the gates to everybody, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there's a really, I don't want community to go into that. We need to scale absolutely everything. We need to grow absolutely everything. We need 1 million people in the community or it isn't successful. Like that kind of mindset is going to be quite hurtful for communities. And when it doesn't reach those ginormous KPIs, you're going to see people kind of pulling away from community. And it's so incredibly important because it's your touch to the customers. When they don't need anything from you, when it's not like a 6-month checkup. And that's the thing is you remember the little things. Like in life, you remember, like there's big moments where people can be flashy and impress you, but it's the little things that you remember. And in community, it's the exact same way. If you only care for me every 6 months because in your calendar, it says you need to reach out to me, but you ignore me in the community, I'm going to notice.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember and be like, you're caring because I'm on your calendar to care. I need you to care because I'm a human, because I'm a customer, because I'm here. And so it's incredibly important to just make sure that you keep that mindset of making sure that it's like the metrics matter, but they alone are not the success or failure of the community itself.
I totally agree, Kristen. I think even generally when it comes to marketing, it is playing the long game at the end of it. But, obviously when you have like your meetings and stuff and you're discussing the numbers, it's like, oh, numbers went down. Why was that? Let's investigate it. I mean, you always have to keep remembering it's a long game. But KPIs do matter. And how can community managers set KPIs in a way, what's the practical way of setting KPIs really for community managers? Is there anything that you would recommend as to what they should be really measuring?
They need to be measuring different parts of the journey. So they need to be thinking about, I would first off look at doing a journey map for your members. So we do customer maps all the time, like customer journey maps are just a thing. We just naturally know we need to do them.
Yeah.
A community member is just the same way. So depending on, you need to make a list of, starting like hyper base level, why do you have a community? And then what do you want to offer there? And then what do you want users to use it for?
Yeah.
What is the value that's going to be there? Is it support based? Is it review based? Is it event based? Like what is at the heart of that?
Yeah.
And then you need to think about what those behaviors look like. And also understanding that, like, if you focus on number of how many people are in there, that's fine. But you can pad a lot of crappy people into a community and be like, see how successful it is? Look at all these people that are in there.
Yeah.
It's still quantity over it still needs to be quality over quantity, not quantity over quality always.
Okay.
You need the right people in the community, and you need to make sure that there's value for them. And you need to be able to figure out what needs to be there in order for people to want to grow. So you have lurkers. A lot of people are going to join a community and they're just going to kind of like sit in the corner and like watch.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening? Who's here? What can I do in here? Are the people in the backyard? Where's the food?
Yeah.
Where's the bathroom? Where do I put my coat? Like, it's a house party. And there's always going to be those people who are the life of the party and want to start every conversation, and they'll run the community for you. And it has nothing to do with your community. They're just outspoken and extroverted to pieces, and they want to be that person.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you you didn't create that. Like, that person is who they are. You just put them in the house where they were going to do that. So you need to look at multiple KPIs. So like vanity metrics, top of the level, how many people are in there? But then on top of that, how many are active versus in there but inactive? And then I would look into more qualitative. What are the pieces that are getting the most traffic? What conversations are most people having? What is the overall sentiment in the community? And then are we growing? And that growth doesn't need to be in members. It could be in content.
True.
It could be in engagement metrics. It could be in the percentage of people who are shifting from inactive to active. But are you seeing a positive shift over time as you're tweaking and testing and experimenting and offering new things? Are you giving them reason to grow? And then I like to also think about, and this isn't really a metric, but if there's any quotes that you have for feedback, like NPS surveys are a really great metric. You want to make sure that people are happy and positive. But I like NPSs with, like, I actually want your feedback. Like, give me a score, grade me all day. I want a paragraph.
Yeah.
What do you love?
Yeah.
What would you change? What do you think is missing? What's your favorite part about being here? What value do you get? Why would you recommend someone else join this group? Because that will tell you so much more. And by asking them for that information, that's empowerment.
Yeah.
Giving them space to say something negative, because your biggest fans may have negative thoughts about things. And some don't want to tell you. It doesn't mean they don't feel that way. They just like, I love you, but I feel bad that I feel like I'm complaining if I say such and such and such.
Right.
And so that empowerment goes into that place too. Do your community members feel empowered and safe to give you positive and negative feedback? Because that's where the growth happens.
Yeah.
If I know what's wrong here, I can fix it. But if I think you're happy because you're afraid of saying something negative, I will never be able to fix it. I'm not psychic. And then you will eventually be like, why don't they see that this is not here? Why don't they also understand? And so you wind up getting resentment along the way too, which is incredibly hurtful for them because they don't feel like they're being heard or appreciated, when at the same time, that was just that miscommunication. So it's not really a metric, but making sure that you allow that room for them to be a part of those conversations, so that when you have that NPS score of like 5 out of 5, they love us, 4 out of 5, I need you to dive a little bit deeper and be like, all right, qualitatively, why?
Yeah.
What do you love? What do you hate? What would you change? What would you tweak? What is the highlight? And the thing is that you'll see a lot of the same answers, but there's always those like little shining little baubles that will have something and you're like, I never would have thought of it from that perspective. And the more you grow your community, the more you're going to have those varying and diverse POVs. And it's so incredibly important to be able to see the community from their perspective. Because as a community manager, you're in the weeds all the time. So you see the ecosystem and you can read the room quite well, but you can't read from someone else's perspective. Like, I carry my baggage with me, just like someone else carries their baggage with them.
Yeah.
So no one's going to see the community exactly the way I am as a member. And I'm not going to be able to see the community the way someone else is, because there's varying things that they may experience that I don't have experience with. And it doesn't mean that their experience is invalid or mine's invalid. It just means it's different, but it needs to be acknowledged.
I love that answer, because obviously my question was, hoping there would be like X number of something, but that perspective of looking at qualitative things, I think, is very important, especially looking at people who go from inactive to active. I really like that, Christina. So if I may kind of move into a little bit of a personal question. So I know for you, you started off as an educator and then you moved into in maths, if I'm not mistaken, and also you moved into marketing, and now you're in, a community manager. I would love to understand, how that journey happened, because I know even for me, I started in like hospitality and I went to radio and in product marketing. So for you, I want to understand at which point you realize that's what I want to be, being a community manager. And second of all, how do you know that, you're doing a good job? How do you like define success for yourself as a community manager?
Yeah. So I'm a polymath. I'm always the person that will take multiple roles, and if I do like a quiz, they'll say like your left and right brain balanced.
Right.
I was an English major in college. I taught math for 5 years. Very, very different.
Yeah.
But
because it's usually one or the other, at least for me.
Yeah. And like my SAT math and verbal were identical every time I took it. Like, it's just every time. So my thing is that I went into teaching, loved it, then wound up being a stay-at-home mom for a few years, and then had to try to figure out like what's my secondary adulthood career.
Yeah.
And my husband, like 2 weeks into dating, said I should go into marketing because I would fix things. Like, I would tweak and be like, it would be better with this. So I would just naturally deconstruct. And I am a deconstructionist at heart, like full on, have no control over it. It's just how my brain's wired. And so I'm constantly trying to look for improvements and look for ways that we can really shift things so that it's a better experience. Okay. And so I did a talk earlier this year for Teal, and it was about like a nonlinear path. And for me, looking back, there's this really cool string that just kind of threads through everything I've done. And so I wind up at the end of this path doing marketing, doing community management, doing advocacy work. And it all has these, like, it's this recipe that's really just this stew, is no other way to say it, of all these ingredients that I've picked up along the way with my career. So I love educating others. I love making people feel like they're valid and they're smart and they're intelligent and they have something worthy to say. That's so much my advocacy work. That's so much me giving the mic to someone else and letting them shine and making them feel worthy to shine. Because when I was a math teacher, a lot of the times I was giving the students that other people didn't want. I was giving the students that had learning differences. And for 2 years, I taught a private school that was specifically for students with learning differences.
Right.
And while I was there, we had to take Orton-Gillingham training, which is a specific way of training for learning differences. And it's really, and we focused on differentiated instruction. So you're given, like, I need to teach this today, but I need to do it from like a verbal, a tactical way. I need to make sure that if someone is auditory, that they're going to be able to understand this. We had small groups, but that's segmentation.
Yeah.
Like that's making sure that your marketing is distributed and segmented in such a way that like this audience gets this kind of messaging because that's going to resonate with them, and this one has this kind of copy and imagery because that's exactly what that is. It's just from a learning perspective instead of a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
So that's the marketing. And then I've done a lot with consulting.
Okay.
And I was a marketing director for the SBDC in Roanoke. And so I had to do all of our in-house marketing, also did any out of house, any paid, organic, and then also taught the classes that we had for marketing, SEO, like all those things. But then also was a consultant for all of the marketing needs for any clients that we had. So I had this small business kind of bootstrap kind of ideology of, if I have someone come in today that had a marketing plan or a marketing idea yesterday, I need to be able to immediately start thinking about how would I do that? How would I advise them without any prior notice? Like,
right.
Hey, Christina, can you come into this meeting? And then I'm just immediately start pitching. And I'm like, all right, here's where my headspace is at. This is what I'm thinking. I'm taking notes. And so being able to think on the fly and understand trends and understand how I would look from like a multitude of perspectives is incredibly helpful because I see that now. I have tons of advocates and I need to be able to really kind of see it from their perspective at any given moment. All right, this is your predicament. How can I help you? How are the motivations different? How are the behaviors different? How are the needs different? And how can we fix those? So the string of always wanting to help in some capacity has literally just been a part of my entire career. And I found HubSpot. HubSpot's actually the reason why I felt comfortable actually going into marketing.
Okay.
My husband thought I should do it, but Hubspot Academy set the foundation for that. I found Hubspot Academy, took all the classes, and then I wound up doing Coursera classes, MOOCs, and did ones from Johns Hopkins. I did some from UVA, from Wharton, I did the digital marketing specialization from University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And so education has always been that thing of like, if I want to pivot or do something different, online education has really democratized access to all of these different things, whether it's from a company or like HubSpot with HubSpot Academy, or whether it's through universities, through Coursera or edX. It's always been this thread of I'm a constant learner and I want to help others. And so it feels very nonlinear until you look down at the ground and you see this like little ribbon, this little string that just like is on the ground, like just the whole path.
Well, I love that story. Christina, I also want to understand again, like on that like same note, I've also noticed like, with the work that you're like doing at like HubSpot as well, I don't really call it like brand building, but I've noticed that even like personally for you, you've like built that community on like Twitter, for example. So it's actually a two-part question. One is, how do like even individuals build like the community for themselves? And the second one being, how do you identify the right channel to do that? I think that could be even for a business and a person, both.
Yeah. So for me, I was at an agency last year, and like a lot of people, I completely burned out. And I'd been on Twitter before, and I had a decent following, nothing crazy, nothing too large. I think it was like 6,000 or something. And I was already like sharing other people's content because I don't believe I know everything, because I don't think anyone does. And I think there's an opportunity for us to amplify others and share, and we can all learn from each other. I think that's incredibly important. Yeah. So when I burned out at the agency and I left, one of the things that I loved about the agency was I was the person that would go into like the Slack and team communications and say like, hey, there's a conference coming up, or hey, did you check out this article? Or so I was always like feeding the team like you're not on Twitter, but I am. Here's stuff that you need to think about and know in order to do your job even better, because we can all build each other up and share knowledge.
Yeah.
And so when I left, that was the void that was left for me. Is like, I need to grow stuff. I need to help others. Like I want to share like everything I'm seeing, because otherwise I'm just filling it into my brain and it'll explode one day. And so I put all that effort into Twitter and started sharing more purposefully and trying to help and also just unapologetically share like how hard it was last year for many of us. I wrote a few articles. I had one that was republished on the Next Web that was talking about how it's hard to not plug in. Yeah. Because social media managers are we're paid to be plugged in. Yeah. And so when the world is burning down and you were in it 24 hours a day digitally, how do you handle that? Like we're all crumbling. And so I really wanted to create this sense of community and connection. And I also continue to see a lot of really big accounts that just spout nonsense. And there's some incredibly brilliant people who have like 137 followers that just don't get the love that they deserve. And it's not that what they're saying isn't important. And it's not that what they're saying isn't valuable. It's just because of their follower count and their reach, they're just not given the lift and the reach that they deserve. They're not given the visibility. So I really wanted to find smaller creators that were saying great, brilliant things, but just didn't have the audience they deserved. Yeah. And so over time, they're starting to grow that. And then I did a tweet last year around December, basically saying, if you have less than 1,000 followers, for the same reasons, let's find you small creators who are brilliant. Yeah.
Introduce yourself, make friends. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Make friends, make friends. Let us know a little bit more about you. And let's grow. Let's connect and learn more about each other. And so it went a little viral. Yeah. A little bit. A little bit. But I think that it's grown I think it's helped a lot of people to connect with others. There's been a lot of meetups from people who met because of that thread. Yeah. I still get responses to it every now and then, which is really nice. Yeah. But I hope that it's made the industry better. I hope that we've connected and started using social for good. Social media gets used for such nefarious reasons so many times. I'd love for it to be used positively to make our industry and to make the world better. Yeah. And so a lot of my content, when it's not about marketing Twitter or Marvel, it's about like, we need to make this better. We need to use our power to do this. And so I hope other people are following suit. And also just like, it doesn't need to be about people. Like, it doesn't need to be about you. Yeah. Like, sharing other people's content doesn't make you look worse. Yeah. And if you share things that are valuable and you connect others, they're going to remember, hey, I found this person because this person shared them. I was able to learn this because this person shared it. So it does positive things. It doesn't diminish you. It doesn't make you look like you're not worthy. And so if we could just kind of take that ego away from it, I think a lot of people would have a better experience online. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much, Christina. I thank you for what you do and, talking so much about bringing empathy and, trying to make that difference in any way possible. So thank you for taking the time today and talking all about community building. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I had a wonderful time. Thanks for having me.